I don't understand how else to get this through the government's thick skull that they are killing people. And that is also a part of our lawsuit. There are two plaintiffs, probably soon we're adding more plaintiffs, but there are two plaintiffs on the case that have lost their daughters in preventable deaths. This country has become a graveyard of preventable deaths.
We are so thrilled to have Kate Alexander back with us today, but this time she's in studio here at Northern Perspective. For those of you not familiar, Kate Alexander is a Canadian actress, musician, songwriter, human rights advocate, and founder of EVE, or End Violence Everywhere. Today we want to talk to her about the landmark lawsuit against the Canadian government that seeks justice for almost 24 plaintiffs who have been victimized by our court system in failing to protect them against sexual abuse, intimate partner violence, or IPV. Kate, thank you so much for joining us on Northern Perspective.
Thank you, Ryan. It's so special to be here. Seriously, I was like, it's real. My internet friends are real. This is incredible. So, yeah, you and Tanya have done such important work, and you know all the lovely drama that brought us together.
Right, and who would have thought a committee meeting would have made this happen? So
who would have thought a summertime committee meeting would introduce me to some incredible Canadians, and just wow, what a ride this has been.
Well, and it was interesting because for those who haven't seen it, what Kate is referring to is a committee meeting that we covered, and it was what's the women's committee called again?
Status of
Women's Committee. Michelle Ferrari is on that committee, and we love Michelle. And there was a crazy exchange that happened with Anita Vandenbeld, who is or was a Liberal MP, and she decided that the solution to talking about domestic violence was to not talk about it and talk about abortion instead. And it was a disgusting display where Kate and her colleague Megan showed up to committee to talk about domestic abuse, the impact of the courts on your case specifically, and what the problems were. And the Liberals didn't want to talk about it. They just interrupted it with this talking point of abortion, and that just blew up. It blew up in the media, and we covered it. And then on a whim, I said, well, I wonder if this Kate lady will talk to us. And then so I messaged her, and then we ended up having her on the show. So you could actually check that out as well if you wanted to see that interview that we had with her. And I think you were on twice, were you not?
Yeah, we did. We did a follow-up after Anita wasn't willing to apologize for her actions. Pierre Poilievre and I think the Bloc did, but Anita failed to apologize for putting a motion in about abortion after I was holding up the bloody and black and blue photos of my body, and she and Leah Gazan, NDP, decided that they wanted to hijack the meeting with this motion, and I spent 25 minutes sitting in my spinning chair going, what are we talking about? Why is this happening? Why are they arguing over whose hand is up first? And then I couldn't take it anymore. So I walked out, and in my probably the least classy moment that people have seen publicly, told them to politely F off.
We can't do this anymore. No wonder nothing gets done in this country. Over our bodies. Shame on you.
So,
right.
It was enough is enough. We're not doing it that way anymore.
Well, and it's actually why you're here today, because for those that don't know, this should have got much more media exposure than it has. Credit to those organizations that actually did cover it. You and a couple dozen people launched a lawsuit to actually sue the government of Canada.
This lawsuit involves more than a dozen survivors of violence from right across the country who say they've been failed by the justice system. In most cases, their alleged attackers were set free before trial because the clock ran out.
His charter rights, mattered more than mine.
Former Toronto resident Kate Alexander has been advocating for an overhaul of the justice system ever since the assault charges against her ex-boyfriend were dropped. She documented some of the abuse and shared graphic images with City News from the night she was nearly killed, evidence that would have been used in trial.
Despite dozens of photos during the attack, videos of me begging for my life, medical records, police reports, every charge against my ex was thrown out.
Alexander is among the 14 women who have launched a lawsuit against the Canadian government. It calls for changes to a 2016 Supreme Court ruling known as a Jordan Law that ensures trials are completed within 18 months of charges being laid or 30 months for federal cases.
We have a situation where in our criminal justice system, over half of the cases that the system handles are actually intimate partner violence and sexual assault cases. And hundreds of these cases are now being stayed and dismissed every year.
According to the lawsuit, about a third of intimate partner violence cases are dropped. Lawyer Catherine Marshall is representing the victims and says the lawsuit is calling on the government to take immediate action.
There are certain cases that they should be expedited when you're dealing with dangerous offenders. So we're looking for the government to intervene and actually impose some guidelines on how the Jordan decision should be utilized in the court system, because right now it's being weaponized against victims.
Court delays have been an ongoing issue for many years, and when the pandemic hit, the system slowed to a crawl. Donna Kelway is with the Ontario Crown Attorneys Association, and while she has nothing to do with the lawsuit, she tells me the courts continue to be underfunded for the mounting pressures.
So at the same time that we have a backlog and we have cases that are more complicated to prosecute, more data to receive, review, disclose, and process in terms of getting a matter to trial, we have less time in which to do it in and less time to make sure that cases that need to be or that should be heard on their merits are heard.
Now, the lawsuit is also seeking $15 million in damages for the psychological and financial harms these victims experienced. Shauna Hunt, City News.
That press conference was on March 31st. So rather than me tell everybody what it was about, what is this lawsuit?
This is the charter lawsuit for the government infringing on our charter rights, our being survivors of intimate partner violence, sexual abuse, and families dealing with femicide. We have been struggling, not so silently anymore, but in silence for too long. My attempted murder was stayed in, the first 5 charges were stayed in 2022, and then the last 3 charges were stayed in 2024. And I never received a criminal trial for nearly being killed in Toronto.
And your ex was charged with 8 charges, was he not?
Yeah. He had eight criminal charges in 2 different levels of court, in the provincial and the superior court. And due to the Supreme Court of Canada amending the charter rights in 2016 under the Trudeau government, they allow trials, or they allow charges to be stayed regardless of the evidence. I mean, I have my attempted murder on video. I have the SWAT team was there, the tactical team, whatever you want to call it, and we have the hospital records. There's no contest as to what occurred, and he's free, no consequences, because the time ran out.
So for those that don't know, what Kate is talking about is there's a Supreme Court decision, and it's known as RV Jordan. And what that essentially was a decision by the Supreme Court to essentially say that if court cases aren't tried within a certain amount of time, they become stayed or dismissed, and then it's over. It's done. So the intent of that was supposedly to help deal with violations of charter rights, but I don't see how they thought that was going to deal with that, because all this really does is it exacerbates the problem of our backlog court system that can't get through these trials fast enough. And so victims end up being re-victimized for the rest of their lives because they have to relive that trauma every single day, knowing that the people that actually committed these crimes against them are out free.
that and those types of individuals. So that decision was so misguided and lacked so much foresight. It's utterly reprehensible that they were even able to consider it an option. And this is, the prime example of the white ivory tower theoretical people making decisions that affect real people's lives every single day. And the fact that it's taken 10 years to even come to some form of serious conversation about it is scary, but here we are. And I'm so sick and tired of seeing cases, and it's happening. It's not about my case. It's about the fact that this is happening predominantly to cases of IPV and SA, because 50% of cases in the court are of that nature.
Right.
So it's done such a disservice to a population of people that are already in the worst days of their lives, and also trying to recover from something that is almost sometimes unrecoverable. So it's just so favorable to people who deserve punishment and consequences. And that is the premise of this lawsuit, was to speak out against this in a collective, in a collective, serious way, that's saying, no, we are not going to do justice in this country like this. It is not safe, and we can't continue like this.
And these victims need some sort of justice. They need some sort of closure, if possible, and some sort of compensation for, call it malpractice of the law in what has come to pass, and what even new victims are dealing with every single day, when they're expecting our justice system is going to serve them. And then, unfortunately, many of them find out either days or years later that no, that's not going to happen. The justice system is not configured in a way that is actually going to give you that justice. And it's not something that you would think would be happening in Canada, of all places.
Yeah.
And this was the warning that you've been giving everybody for years now. And it's great that there's now a group of people, including yourself, that have literally said, to your point, enough is enough, and we deserve some sort of compensation for this systemic problem. So
Canada's become, and it breaks my heart because I love this country so much. That's just why I come back. I don't live here anymore for my safety, because my ex is free about an hour away from here. And he probably would have been successful had I stayed, because the patterns that I see with individuals such as himself are they don't magically get better. They don't want to stop. And when the system encourages them, they then become successful in their quest. It's a miracle I'm alive. I don't know why I'm alive, other than to perhaps do what needs to be done, but it came so close, and there's a darkness in that level of evil that I don't really have the language for. But when the system then doubled down on that problem I can fix. That problem, I know that there's something that can be done, because the public also deserves to not have individuals like that running free, for the same reasons that the survivors do, because those same individuals that are committing, petty theft and other fraud, white collar crime, whatever type of other criminal activity, are generally the same individuals. It's 66% of individuals who are committing community crimes that are also committing IPV and sexual assault. And so you're dealing with a subset of the population. And this is something that Canada does not address well, because we're the maple syrup loving polar bear hugging. I don't think they hug well, but the hockey people, where all the nice people are, and we're all just, hey, Tim and Tommy or whatever, and we're getting along just great. But that's not the reality of how things are going. And I think the public feels that now. And I think that we have, I mean, I have to thank the community for being on our side throughout this, because that has been the only semblance of justice that I have. But I worry about my former neighbors living beside my ex, because he still lives in the same house he killed and tried to kill me in. He still lives there. And so I worry about every single person that gets introduced to him, because you just never know when he's going to pop off. And so the fact that we had such an open and shut case, and the government literally said, we don't have time for this, and dismissed it. It's just, it's mind-boggling. And so I really thought in 2022, I thought I was shooting this movie or whatever, and I just thought to myself, I said, okay, we have to do something. I don't know what this is, but I want to sue the government. And here we are. We found an amazing lawyer, Catherine Marshall, who's doing this entirely pro bono. And this is where we're starting with this. And she and her team have been, they have the same attitude about this. It's like, this is for all Canadians. This is not just about survivors. And so they've been instrumental in making, crazy, wild dreams come true, but also putting the legal jargon and backbone behind this. And this is not just about money. That is a aspect of it, as every good civil suit should have. Survivors are entitled to compensation 100%. But this is about change. This is about changing the system. And that is in our award request, because we desperately need it. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about something else that has affected the issues that are going on in the justice system, which is Bill C-75. So Bill C-75, as some may know, was introduced into Parliament on March 29th of 2018 by the Trudeau Liberals. It was debated and voted on, and it received royal assent on June 21st of 2019. Now, there are many different amendments to the criminal justice system included in this, but there is one in particular that we're going to talk about. So this is what we're talking about here. This is the principle of restraint. And what this says is the act will be including this principle of restraint for police and courts to ensure that the release at the earliest opportunity is favored over detention, that bail conditions are reasonable, relevant to the offense, and necessary to ensure public safety, and that sureties are imposed only when less onerous forms of release are inadequate.
Oh, it gives me chills.
So the problem with that, big problem with that, is that the public safety aspect is almost never considered, because they have to abide by the least restrictive part of the principle there. So this is why you see people being put out on bail. This is why you see people being put in house arrest. This is why you see these ridiculous conditions of release for criminals of all shapes and sizes. And this is why you see the massive increase in violent offenders and violent crimes, because, to your point earlier, it's the same people that are committing this. So you have the same people that are committing crime after crime after crime, and it looks like there's all hundreds of thousands of criminals out there. Well, there's actually not. It's just a small subset of them committing all these crimes because they're being released the very next day. There was a case in Hamilton where someone was arrested, brought into court, given bail, and then when they left the courthouse, they stole a car from the parking lot and then drove away. This is the silliness that is going on in our justice system at this point. So, and the tragic thing is that we're seeing this injustice continue across the spectrum, where these criminals are coming out and they're either injuring or in some cases killing innocent Canadians, and in some cases Canadians they've never even seen or heard from before. Yeah. But in other cases, it ends up being somebody that they know that's very close to them. So you're obviously very familiar with the R.B. Jordan ruling of this.
Too familiar.
So what is your take on this ridiculous piece of legislation that essentially exacerbated that, because one would argue, or at least I would argue, the more crimes a criminal has, the harder it is going to be to actually schedule trial for them, because it's bogging down the court system even more. So to me, it's almost in their best interest to continue committing crimes, so that via RV Jordan, they never serve trial ever. Is that?
That is 100% accurate. I feel it in my bones, because there are women, men as well, who should be alive, and they're not, because an abuser criminal was let out on bail. And that is inherently, entirely, 100% the abuser and the government's fault. 100%. I'm giving a community victim impact statement on Wednesday for a woman who was stabbed in Toronto, a 30-year-old, and she had reached out numerous times. She said, I don't want this guy around. He had already been arrested for strangling her, and he went through the PARS program. They dropped all the charges, and he killed her 8 months later. And I know so many parents, dads who don't have their daughters anymore because of this law. And it just, shame on I'll say the Trudeau government for allowing this. And I've argued with them in the Status of Women Committee about reverse onus and all of that nonsense. And I've argued with them about this issue, and they still want to fight me on it. And I am so happy that they are not going to be allowed to be in office, or Trudeau and his cronies are not allowed to be in office anymore. It's entirely their fault. And these are beautiful families, because abuse, people need to understand, abuse isn't happening it is happening in the back alleys, but it's not exclusively happening there. These are Canadian families in middle class, upper middle class, all stripes. Abuse does not discriminate. And I don't understand how else to get this through the government's thick skull that they are killing people. And that is also a part of our lawsuit. There are 2 plaintiffs, probably soon we're adding more plaintiffs, but there are two plaintiffs on the case that have lost their daughters in preventable deaths. This country has become a graveyard of preventable deaths. And it's so simple to fix it. It's mind-boggling. Why is pandering to criminals? Why does this country do that? Why has it? We have to change course now. We are at the tipping point where this is either going to go down to the bottom of hell where we're headed, or we're going to bring it back, and we're going to fix it. And it can be fixed so easily.
So recently we've had Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre talk about their approach to crime.
Yeah.
Now, what is your take on the approach? Like, which one do you and people in the community of survivors, which do they put their faith behind?
I voted for Michael Chong and Pierre Poilievre today.
And is that, a result of his policies? Is that a result of his response to, individual cases? Is that as a result of his public statements about it? What convinced you?
It's having lived through the criminal and justice system under a Liberal government, under the Trudeau government, and watching them massacre my case. And then once the final charges were stayed and I got my lovely peace bond, which just expired about 2 weeks ago, so I have no productions against my ex now. I reached out, I went public with the story. I reached out to Trudeau, Jagmeet, and Pierre. And who responded in 48 hours? Pierre. Trudeau took 7 months to return an email. Jagmeet never did. Then, the Status of Women Committee in July, which was July 31st, which was the 3-year anniversary of my attempted murder, actually. What Anita Vandenbell did, what Leah Gazan did to silence survivors further. Pierre actually sent over staffers to come be with us when that happened, when everyone saw that pop off. And Anna, Michelle, Shelby, all of those MPs have, personal phone numbers. Call us anytime. What do you want? How can we fix this? It's just, they've surrounded us. And the conservative, and I have values that would be considered liberal. I did vote for in the snap election. I did vote blue in the snap election because I cannot stand Trudeau. He makes my skin crawl. But I wouldn't necessarily be your typical conservative voter or think as such or work in an industry but this Conservative Party is not your dad's Tory party. These are smart people who genuinely have cared about us, and I am publicly proud to announce that I have, as of today, voted for them. But it also is about the policies. It's also about, they have been listening. I'm sitting in these Status of Women committees and the Liberals are trying to argue with me about whether or not my ex should have been out on bail, which he was the next day. And that's why I left Canada, to never return, because he started stalking me and he would have finished the job had I stayed. And so arguing with Liberals about the policy and the reverse onus and C-75, and it's just like, why are you trying to gaslight my experience when I know that this is inherently wrong? How do you not see that? And there are a few good Liberal members. There are a few good NDP members. I have relationships with them. But by and large, I will 100% say this Conservative government gets it. They get the policy. They're willing to listen to the policy. We deserve a new start. We deserve a fresh start. And I'm very, very proud to say that I have never had a bad experience with them in the last year.
So what do you say to women out there? Because the stats are saying that it's mostly women that are going to be voting Liberal at this point in the race. What do you say to them when they say, well, Pierre seems angry, Pierre seems creepy? What do you say to them, and that's their reason to not vote for
Did
Conservatives?
Justin not give you that heebie-jeebie feeling? Because I've had that since day one. Sorry.
Well, they're trying to say,
I'm like, what? My sweaty senses are all about that before. I was like, he's not that hot. If you haven't met someone, how can you make that judgment? How can you the media is doing, there are so many amazing journalists, and I love all of the media that we've worked with, and they have done such an incredible job helping us with these issues. But there are narratives, and people do have, personal agendas that they do put in as far as influence. I was just at the Canada Strong and Free Network on a panel there. That's a predominantly conservative, conference gathering up in Ottawa last week. All of those conservative men were so respectful, kind, supportive, safe feeling. I mean, I watched them cry when I was on stage while we were talking about these issues. And I really think that people need to understand that Canadian conservatism is different than American conservatism. And they need to understand that also, I've also experienced that women are afraid to say that they're voting for Pierre in a public sense because they're afraid to be lambasted for that choice. I had so many women reach out to me yesterday when I announced that I was voting for Pierre, because they're like, so am I, but I don't know how to say that without the repercussions. And I'm like, why is this? This is crazy. So I urge people to make the right decision for them, but make an informed decision. Read the policies, pay attention to what is factual. I know that's a slogan term that people like to thug around, but pay attention to what is actually going on. And Pierre's married to a beautiful woman who has been so supportive of survivors. She's written letters for our rally. She is a proponent in ending human trafficking, which is another massive problem in this country. And really take time to consider that this might be a nouveau conservative party. It's not your dad's Tory party,
Well, and the best thing about this conservative group is I get the sense you've interacted with them, we've interacted with them. There's no BS when it comes to them. It's sincerity, it's integrity, and they want to bring back, that feeling of what Canada used to be.
I think that's so essential. And the thing is, Trudeau promoted himself as the feminist government, yet he's probably killed more women under his reign that should be alive by way of policy. That how can you even call yourself that? Are women not coming forward about him now? And I think we deserve to we need to look at this not just from one angle. And we need to understand that a lot of the cabinet members, a lot of the members of parliament would be the same people that were in Trudeau's government. We need to make wiser choices based on that. And again, I'm not telling anyone how to vote. I just know in my heart from personal firsthand experience that the Conservatives have been with me above and beyond, and been with survivors above and beyond in the last year. And I mean, all of them across the country. And I've met with, 50 or so different politicians in this country, like personally, one-on-one on Zoom or whatever. And they get it. They get it. They want to fix it. And I really hope that Canadians consider that if you want to be safe, that is the party to choose.
Well, and Canadians, to your point, they need to make an informed vote. And part of having an informed vote is to understand what the last 10-year track record has been for the Liberal Party, not just the financial party, because let's be honest, they've killed many people with their financial decisions as well. But even if it's just what they've done with the justice system, like forget the rest of it. Just what they've done with the justice system and the amount of people they have sent to an early grave just because of the policy changes they put in for some reason. It's not like there was a prompt, like crime was low in Canada. So I'm not sure what they were expecting to happen by giving criminals an easier time. But just on that record alone, people need to understand that this is not the way to address crime in Canada. And this is not an opinion. It's not just a point of view. The stats on the government website back everything up, unfortunately. So Canadians, when you're at the polls, when you're considering which party to vote for, really take all of this into account. So in terms of next steps for the lawsuit, Kate, so what do you expect to happen next from your case's point of view? I know more plaintiffs are coming forward, which is great because they will then get a voice. So what happens next?
So we are waiting. I mean, it is election time. We did time it out that way because we want this to be inherited by whoever. This is actually an opportunity for governments to do right by survivors for once. Our lawyers have been in contact with certain members of the government to discuss what the next steps are. I don't expect anything more formal to come until after government is formed, which is, I mean, they might have to put a response in because the 30 days is ticking. But it might not crush the threshold if I do my math correctly. But we are welcoming new plaintiffs. So if anyone wants to come forward, the lawsuit is tied in issues of Jordan regarding stays, but we are looking at all matters, very carefully, whether that's bail. Injustice is injustice. That's what this is about. It's about Canadian injustice. It's about the fact that there's no recourse for survivors in this country. There's very little support, which is why I founded End Violence Everywhere. And, we've very successfully raised over 6 figures in the last week at a couple of different events. That money goes back to supporting survivors directly with legal aid, free trauma-informed EMDR, different types of therapy. We are providing advocates in the courtrooms, which doesn't happen in Canada, which is crazy. We're really trying to be there for survivors in a way that they really haven't had before. And it's so important because survivors they're empathetic, they're kind, they are usually some of the best people because narcissistic abusers prey on those types of people. They like the good people. And so survivors are worth saving. There's no shame in it. All of this lies in the hands of the abusers. All of this fault lies in the hands of the government. And so we're in a really pivotal time right now. And I just, I ask people to do what's right for you, but take this issue into consideration because you cannot be successful in your life if you are not safe. That's it. And people can see it on the streets. You go outside of Ottawa. I volunteered on Skid Row in Los Angeles. It kind of looks the same. It's getting to that point, and that's scary.
Yeah, Canada is not supposed to be an unsafe country.
No.
It's not what we're known for. So, but folks, if you're interested in helping out, go to endviolenceeverywhere.org. I always mess that up.
No, it's a nonprofit. It's a registered nonprofit in Canada and the United States.
So you can get more information there, learn more about Kate with a C and an I, as you'll see on our thumbnail. And there's ways for you to donate there if you would like to contribute as well. But we will be following this case with great interest and providing updates. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last time Kate is going to be joining us.
I hope not. I can't wait to see. Yeah, I can't wait to come back.
Can't wait to see our super secret project as well. Anyway, Kate, it was lovely having you on. Thank you for talking to us about this, and thank you for telling Canadians about this important, as they say, landmark lawsuit. So
thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say, survivors, you're not alone. Please reach out. We are here for you. We respond to every single person who reaches out, whether that's on Instagram, an email, whatever that looks like. You're not alone. People do care. And please, please, please get in touch.